Back to the Malamut Law pregame show here from Ocean Casino in Atlantic City, the Gallery Bar, book, and games. We did just get the inactives in. Tanner McKee, of course, inactive. Rashad Penny, Dallas Goedert is inactive today. Sua Epeta and linebacker Zach Cunningham inactive. The good news out of that, Fletcher Cox's name not on that list, so Fletcher Cox is active. The Eagles will have that extra push. We'll see what he'll be able to bring to the table. For more on this game, let's go to Lincoln Financial Field, talk to our NFL insider and co-host of Birds 365, John McMullen, joining us right now. John, for the third straight game now, I have to ask you first about the weather conditions, and then also I'm going to ask you about expectations for Fletcher Cox in this matchup. But first, John, what's it looking like at the Link?
Yeah, it wasn't looking great, Mark, but I think we're going to get a break. Rain is supposed to stop. I think it has stopped. It's so gloomy out. But it's just a small drizzle, and it seems to be wrapping up. So by kickoff, it's supposed to be just cloudy, and we're finally going to get a football game without the rain. So if you checked it out this morning, it was not looking good. The tarp was on the field, so we'll see how the playing surface is. But I think we're going to dodge a bullet as far as having a third consecutive rain game for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Excellent. We know that Dallas Goedert is inactive today, and that's an unfortunate thing, obviously, but Fletcher Cox is active. What are the realistic expectations with him? What percentage of Fletcher Cox do you think we'll get in this game today?
Yeah, well, that's the question now. As you mentioned, he is active. Fletcher was on the field. It was pretty clear he's preparing to play. There's not a lot of guys the Eagles would allow to play when they don't practice during the week, and that's exactly Fletcher's one of them. He did not practice at all during the week, but made a push to play, was out there. The question is, can he play his normal number of snaps, and that's what we'll keep a close eye on. But obviously when you have Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams is going to be back after missing last week with a concussion, Marlon Tuipulotu. So you really go deep on the defensive front, especially on the interior. And that's, where the Eagles should have the big advantage against the San Francisco offensive line, which has Trent Williams, who's a tremendous Hall of Fame level player. But the other four guys are not as good, to put it mildly. So the Eagles are going to have to take advantage of it and have their full strength on the interior is going to be really important.
John, we were talking earlier in the show about the trash talking leading up to this game this week. What kind of energy are you seeing out of the Eagles out there as they're warming up? I mean, are they warming up with some attitude, or are they bringing that Philadelphia style back to this warm-up here to set the tempo?
Well, Nick Sirianni talked about it in his team meeting, so that's been reported by Jake Glazer on Fox. So Nick has always been a guy, he always says, if you can use it, use it. And he's even said, if you can make it up and use it. So he told his players to take it personally. He obviously wants them to play with a chip on their shoulder. I think that's, sort of dependent on a personal level. If you talk to, especially the veteran players, shouldn't need anything further for motivation. But yeah, I mean, there have been some high-profile instances of chirping after the NFC Championship game. So the Eagles are trying to use it. We'll see if it works or if it doesn't work.
Hey, John, what's going on, man? We've been talking a lot about how we think that the Eagles need to stop this 49ers rushing attack first. Christian McCaffrey, obviously a playmaker. Eagles are light at linebacker. No Zach Cunningham. You're going to have Christian Ellis playing a lot of snaps. Ben Van Sumeren maybe getting some reps. Would you come with a little bit more five-man fronts today if you're the Philadelphia Eagles defense to try to prevent that offensive line to get into the second level and get into those linebackers?
Yeah, I do think you go with a few more 50 fronts, especially early on early downs, and you're better equipped to do that with Fletcher Cox in there typically, and Milton Williams, because Milton was out last week. So start with Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams in the interior, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick outside. They'll be able to do that. That's going to be the key to stopping Christian McCaffrey in the running game or containing him. The linebacker situation is what it is. Zach Cunningham out. We'll see if they can get a deal done with Shaq Leonard. After this game, we're going to see if he chooses the Eagles or Cowboys, which is very interesting because obviously they're going to play each other next week. But I do think when you get to known pass situations, though, I think everybody's hyper-focused on Christian Ellis. I think you're going to see a lot of big nickel. I think you're going to see a lot of three safety looks with Kevin Byard, Sidney Brown, Reed Blankenship, and that's how they might piecemeal it together without Zach Cunningham.
John, how much of an advantage is it for Sean Desai having coached in Seattle and played against San Francisco quite a bit, and then earlier this year having played against Mike McDaniel's Miami Dolphins, who run a similar style offense with all the motion, all the shifts, and everything that goes with it? You know, how much of an advantage is it for him having seen all of that to prepare this team for what they're going to see against this 49ers offense?
Yeah, I think it's an advantage. I think it's always an advantage. You know, really this offense is the Mike Shanahan offense if you want to go all the way back. So heavy play action, and anytime you've seen it, you've seen it a lot like Sean has. He can obviously key in his players to what San Francisco's trying to accomplish. And they do it better than anybody else when it comes to running this offense. So a lot of it obviously is going to come down to execution, but Sean's very familiar with it, and that can never be a bad thing. So I think it can only help. But, you know, when you have playmakers like McCaffrey and Ayuk and Kittle and Deebo Samuel, it's easier said than done. You might know what they're trying to do, but it doesn't mean you can stop it. But I don't think it can hurt that Sean has a great familiarity with this particular offense.
John, to talk about trying to stop that offense, you're going to need some linebackers to help you out just a little bit. And the Eagles linebackers in this particular matchup not looking too impressive, at least on paper. Who are the Eagles linebackers today? Is it Morrow, Ellis, and then obviously Hassan Reddick as an edge rusher in all of this? And then Ben Van Sumeren, I believe, is also up for this game. What does that linebacking core look like to you, and how are they going to use them?
Well, you know, you have to differentiate between all-ball linebackers and edge rushers. So obviously, Hassan Reddick is not going to play all-ball linebacker, but yeah, it's going to be Nicholas Morrow, it's going to be Christian Ellis, and Ben Van Sumeren's the backup. And as I said, I think you're going to you started to see it last week. Going back to the summer, Sean Desai would sort of tinker with these big nickel three safety looks. There were a bunch of injuries. Now with Kevin Byard here, with Reed Blankenship settling in, with Sidney Brown getting more comfortable, I think he kind of unrolled it a little bit against Buffalo, and you're going to see the same thing even a little bit more because Zach Cunningham's not available, especially in known pass situations. My guess is he's going to throw out a little bit more big nickel. So it might be only Nicholas Morrow on the field. It might be that type of situation. But, I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. The Eagles have some issues at the linebacker position. There's no question about it. You know, we don't even talk about Nakobe Dean. So Nakobe Dean and Zach Cunningham are the starting linebackers for this team if everything went correctly, and both are out of this game. So it's never a good thing.
John, while we're on linebackers, let's talk about the linebackers for the 49ers. The 49ers have arguably the best defense that the Eagles have faced so far this year. And we know that Fred Warner's around the ball all the time. That guy just has a nose for the ball. But on top of that, you got this guy named Nick Bosa. A couple people have heard of him. He literally almost committed murder against Geno Smith last week. How do they protect Jalen Hurts? And I'm a huge fan of our Eagles offensive line, but it's got to go beyond that without having Dallas Goedert available. How do we get out there and neutralize guys like that to make our offense more effective?
Well, generally, and that's where not that the 49ers don't have a good front. Yeah, Fred Warner might be the best linebacker in football. Nick Bosa is obviously more of an edge rusher. If you look at last year, he was the defensive player of the year, obviously, but Lane Johnson kind of shut him down. Now, Lane is not 100%. We'll see how healthy he is, but we know he's generally been capable, whether it's Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, whoever you throw at him. He's not going to embarrass himself, let's put it that way. So, same thing with Jordan Mailata against Chase Young. It's not to say they're going to win every rep, but the Eagles are one of the few teams that can line up against the 49ers and say, all right, our tackles are on an island, do something with them. Same with the interior with Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey, Cam Jurgens. So if you're looking for a reason the Eagles win this game, they are better equipped to handle the San Francisco defensive front than vice versa. The San Francisco offensive line has Trent Williams and a bunch of guys. So, it might be a difficult day for Josh Sweat, but the other guys should have a chance to make some plays.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that battle between Jason Kelsey and his former teammate, Javon Hargrave. But we talk a lot about turnovers, and turnovers usually dictate who's going to win a football game. Hasn't really dictated who wins Philadelphia Eagles games, though. They've been losing the turnover battle, keep winning football games. They're -2 in the turnover differential, but they're going up against a 49ers team that is +11, which is number 1 in the NFL. First of all, how can they protect the football against that 49ers defense? And secondly, can they afford to lose the turnover battle today and win this football game?
Well, you never want to lose it, Bill, as you mentioned, but the Eagles have found ways to persevere at times when they have lost, and I know that's one of the most disappointing aspects for the team, that they're underwater. All the, Nick Sirianni constantly preaches, win the turnover battle, win the explosive play battle, you're going to win the football game. They've lost that turnover battle a little bit too much this season, but they've still been able to win football games. I don't think that continues against an opponent like San Francisco, however. So they got to be very sharp when it comes to ball security. And San Francisco's number 1 in the NFL when it comes to turnover ratio. But if you look underneath it, peel a couple layers off the onion, Brock Purdy has been susceptible at times for what they call turnover-worthy throws, and for whatever reason, opposing teams haven't made plays. The thought process long-term, that worm will turn, and hopefully, from the Eagles' perspective, maybe they can get one of those turnover-worthy throws and go the other direction. But on paper, it doesn't look good. San Francisco, as you mentioned, number 1, and the Eagles are underwater, and that's got to change today.
John, the Eagles haven't particularly got off to good starts at all this year. And the San Francisco 49ers, in a lot of ways, in my opinion, are a front-running team. The defensive line, is just frothing at the mouth when they have a lead because they know you got to pass to catch up. The offense is much better statistically when they have a lead opposed to, when they're behind, particularly the quarterback. What can the Eagles do to get off to a faster start rather than feeling a team like San Francisco out for an entire half and then waking up in the second half? I just feel like, if they don't get off to a good start today, it's going to be tough sledding for them to kind of get back to where they need to get to. Now, they played a lot of 10 personnel last week. That's just one back and no tight end. And I know that the 49ers, they are primarily a zone defense. So if you line up 2-by-2, that plays in their hands in the pass game. Sometimes if you even line up in 3-by-1, it plays into their hands because they know how to slide over and gain the extra man in the zone. But I saw a lot last week, probably something leading up, something for the 49ers to think about. They went 10 personnel, trips right, single wide receiver left, and then they motioned DeAndre Swift over to the trip side where you had 4 guys to one side. Now, you can talk about the short passing game and the short passing game being, an extension of the run game. But to me, if they flood the zone that way, they can get 5, 6, 7 yards every time they want to just by throwing the ball out to the flat to DeAndre Swift.
Well, a lot to unpack there, Seth. I wouldn't, I'm not the biggest fan of the bubble screen, as you know, but it worked perfectly. Faking it, as you mentioned, when they went 4-by-1 with DeAndre Swift, which was the walk-off quarterback draw to Jalen Hurts. That was a perfectly designed play that they came back to. So everyone complains about the ugly bubble screens, but sometimes it's more about that particular play. Sometimes it's about setting somebody up for something later down the line. That was a perfect example of it. And San Francisco's without a Pro Bowl level safety, so their corners. I like Ward. I think he's a real physical, real athletic guy, but they don't jump out at you from the perspective of a ton of talent in the back, in the secondary when you compare it to their front seven. That's the strength of their defense, the defensive front and the linebackers. So I think there's going to be plays to be made by the Eagles in the passing game. When you talk about those fast starts, though, I mean, they will tell you ad nauseum, look, can't be 2nd and 10, 2nd and 9, 3rd and 8. They got to find a way to make those third downs manageable. And when that happens, the whole playbook opens for Jalen Hurts, how difficult it is, especially to stop a quarterback that can pull it on the back end, the read option. That makes it very difficult for the defense. And you're right. I mean, the Eagles want to get the lead in this game, make Brock Purdy play from a deficit, make him force throws. And that's where I think he's susceptible to making mistakes. If it's a 14-0 game, San Francisco, I think the Eagles are going to be in deep trouble. So they need to find a way to cure these early game ills. I agree with that. And I think that starts with being more effective on first and second down.
John, I know we talked about the off-the-field conversation when it's come to this game, the trash talk with this game. But if you just boil it down to its simplest form, this is two of the best teams in the NFL going at it. And a lot of national pundits, a lot of critics are looking at the Eagles as if they're not that good because of point differential on the season, the fact that they have to come back in so many of these games. But when push comes to shove, how much of this game, aside from any animosity or bad blood, how much of the Eagles looking at this matchup with the 49ers is almost a prove-it game that they're every bit of worthy of that number one record in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Eagles think about anything as a prove-it game. I mean, they're 10-1 for a second consecutive season. They're pretty confident in their own abilities. Now, will they use it? As we mentioned, Nick Sirianni evidently in his talk to the team, showed some clips of the 49ers saying some of those untoward things. So Nick's not above using anything for motivation. But no, I don't think the Eagles look at any game as a prove-it game. I just think they kind of point to the scoreboard type of thing and say, hey, there's only one 10-1 team in the NFL. They're 10-1 for 2 consecutive seasons. They can go 11-1 for 2 consecutive seasons, which is virtually unheard of. So I don't know if it's prove it as much as they want to keep moving on, because if you beat San Francisco today, they're basically out of the running for the number 1 seed. And obviously it makes more things difficult for Dallas, even if Dallas is able to beat you in AT&T Stadium, which they've already won. I think they've won 14 straight there. So that to me is what this game is about. You don't want to give San Francisco hope and Dallas hope that they can be in the mix for the number 1 seed. You want to kind of put your foot down and say, all right, you're going to have to come through Philadelphia again if you're going to beat the Eagles en route to the Super Bowl. So I think it's more about that than anything else.
John, DeAndre Swift is an incredibly effective runner. He's averaging, if not over, certainly near 5 yards per carry. That gets you a lot of first downs. That gets you a lot of movement down the field, and it eats up a lot of time on the clock. What can we expect to see out of DeAndre? Is he going to get his normal feeding time? And like Seth, I'm going to ask you a compound question. I can't believe that A.J. Brown's not watching or hearing about what's happening down in Miami with Tyreek Hill today. are we going to see him start to reemerge with a big game today as well?
Well, when it comes to the Eagles and the offense, and I say this every week when I get the run-pass question, it's sort of Jalen Hurts driven. I always use that phrase. It's not a run-first team, not a pass-first team. It's a Jalen Hurts first team. And I kind of feel what Jalen has cooking. You know, when you look at A.J. Brown, when he has big weeks, you know, people start asking, why isn't Devontae Smith getting the ball? Well, when A.J. doesn't get the ball, all of a sudden you look at Devontae Smith's column, and he's dominating. So they sort of look at what the defense is trying to take away and go in the other direction. Now, the problem the past couple of weeks is they don't have that third part of the equation in the passing game with Dallas Goedert. That's going to continue this afternoon. He's not going to be back till next week. So that's impacted them a little bit. DeAndre Swift, if you know, when Jalen Hurts was dealing with the knee injury and was struggling a little bit, and that part of his game was taken away, is when you saw DeAndre struggle a little bit. Now that Jalen Hurts is healthy enough to create that spacing, to manipulate the defense with his ability in the running game, that makes things easier for DeAndre Swift. And he had that 36-yard run. Man, that was perfectly blocked. If you guys look at that on tape, everybody, perfect pin and pull from Kelsey and Dickerson. You had a seal block from Jordan Mailata, and even the backside. Cam Jurgens, at the time it was Jack Driscoll and Jack Stoll. They're doing their job. So when the Eagles execute at a high level, they're just difficult to stop.
All right, John, we're an hour away from kickoff. What is your final prediction, your official prediction for Eagles 49ers today?
Yeah, I'm picking the Eagles to win the game because they normally always win the games, and it's tough to pick against them until they actually lose one. So I'm kind of surprised how many people are a little angst-ridden about this game. You know, a 10-1 team that barely ever loses at home has a chance to win a home game. That's how I look at this, and I think the Eagles will find a way, as they typically do. I think it'll be there's going to be some points scored, though. I think it's going to be about a 28-24 game.
28-24. I'm right in that neighborhood as well, my friend. John McMullen, thank you so much. We'll catch up with you during the halftime show here on the JAKIB Sports channel and then again on the postgame show. John McMullen, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. John McMullen, our NFL insider and co-host of Birds 365, Monday through Friday right here on the JAKIB Sports channel. We'll be back with further analysis of this Eagles 49ers matchup and what we can make of the Eagles offensive attack going up against the San Francisco 49ers defense.